Jordan arrived at the office that Monday morning, still feeling the effects of the weekend. The coffee in his hand barely kept him awake as he walked through the corridors filled with grey cubicles. At 28, Jordan was a respected marketing analyst at the company, known for his dedication to work and his calm way of dealing with people. With always well-combed brown hair and attentive eyes, Jordan had an air of confidence that naturally attracted people. His easy smile and willingness to help colleagues made him popular among the team. Dressed in his light blue dress shirt and black dress pants, he exuded an aura of relaxed professionalism. Upon reaching his desk, Jordan was immediately approached by his friend Paul, a tall and slender 30-year-old man with dishevelled blonde hair and an eager smile on his face. Paul worked in the sales department and was known for his outgoing personality and playful manner. "Jordan, I need a big favour from you," said Paul, leaning over the cubicle divider. "Michelle from the finance department finally agreed to go out with me, but since she had already arranged to go out with a friend of hers, now I need to bring someone to keep her friend company. Are you up for it?" Jordan knew Michelle, an elegant woman with long black hair and piercing brown eyes. She was considered one of the most beautiful employees at the company, always impeccably dressed and with a demeanour that exuded confidence. Thinking that her friend would probably be as attractive as Michelle, Jordan didn't hesitate to accept the invitation. "Sure, Paul, you can count on me," Jordan replied with a smile, imagining a pleasant evening ahead. Paul thanked him profusely, giving him the address of the place where everyone would meet after work. It was only later that Jordan, motivated by curiosity, asked who Michelle's friend was. "Ah, it's Stephanie from the tax department," Paul replied casually. Jordan's smile froze for a moment. He knew Stephanie, the shy and awkward girl who worked downstairs. At 25, Stephanie was an almost invisible presence at the company, always dressed in a modest manner with long brown hair often covering part of her face. She usually walked with her head down and had a leg problem that caused her to limp. Jordan had already heard malicious comments about Stephanie in the corridors, something that always bothered him deeply. He abhorred this kind of behaviour and didn't hesitate to call out his colleagues when he caught them making inappropriate jokes. Even so, meeting Stephanie was not something he would have considered on his own. Seeing the hesitation on his friend's face, Paul insisted, "Come on, Jordan. It's just for tonight. After a while, you can come up with an excuse to leave. Don't leave me hanging." Reluctantly, but not wanting to disappoint his friend, Jordan decided to keep the commitment. "All right, Paul. I'll go." The hours passed slowly that day. Jordan found himself frequently looking at the clock, a mix of apprehension and curiosity growing in his chest. When the time finally came to leave, he headed to the address Paul had provided. The chosen spot was a laid-back bar restaurant in the city centre. The exposed brick walls were decorated with vintage posters, and yellow lights hung from the ceiling, creating a cosy atmosphere. Dark wooden tables were scattered throughout the space, some occupied by lively groups of friends, others by couples in intimate conversations. Jordan spotted Paul standing at the entrance, nervously adjusting the collar of his shirt. His friend had put effort into his appearance, wearing a well-ironed white shirt and dark pants. Even his hair, usually messy, was carefully combed. "I think you overdid it a bit with the cologne, Paul," Jordan joked as he approached. "At this rate, you'll end up driving Michelle away." Paul laughed nervously, running a hand through his hair. "You think so? Damn, maybe I got a little carried away." At that moment, a taxi stopped in front of the restaurant. Michelle was the first to get out, stunning as always in a green dress that highlighted her beauty. Her dark hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and a radiant smile lit up her face. Jordan watched Paul straighten his posture, trying to appear taller and more confident. But all his attention was captured when the second passenger got out of the taxi. It was Stephanie, but not the Stephanie he knew from the company corridors. This Stephanie was different. Her hair, usually loose and covering part of her face, was tied up in an elegant bun that fully revealed her features. She wore a simple navy blue dress that fit perfectly on her slender body. What surprised Jordan the most, however, were her eyes. Free from the strands of hair that used to hide them, they shone in a way he had never noticed before. They were a deep shade of brown, almost amber, and conveyed a mix of confidence and determination. That's when Jordan noticed something he had never seen before. A scar on the right side of Stephanie's face. It wasn't big or flashy, but it was there, a silver line running from her temple to her cheek. Strangely, instead of diminishing her beauty, the scar seemed to add a touch of mystery and strength to her face. Jordan and Paul stepped forward to greet the women. Michelle greeted Paul with a kiss on the cheek, making him blush visibly. Stephanie, in turn, offered a shy smile to Jordan. "Hi, Jordan," she said softly. "Thank you for coming." "The pleasure is mine, Stephanie," he replied, surprised by the sincerity in his own voice. The four of them entered the restaurant, with Paul and Michelle soon engaging in a lively conversation. Jordan and Stephanie followed them, a slightly awkward silence hanging between them. As they walked to the table, Jordan noticed something curious. Several restaurant staff and even some customers greeted Stephanie warmly. She responded to each with a gentle smile and sometimes even stopped for a brief conversation. Stephanie's face lit up. "I love it, especially soccer. My dad used to take me to all the games when I was a child." And so, as if a floodgate had been opened, the conversation began to flow naturally between them. Jordan discovered that Stephanie was not only a sports fan, but also an enthusiastic participant. She spoke with passion about street running and even her experiences with skydiving. "Wait, you've been skydiving?" Jordan asked, incredulous. Stephanie laughed, a melodious sound that Jordan realized he had never heard before. 3 times, actually. It's an incredible feeling of freedom. As the night went on, Jordan found himself increasingly fascinated by Stephanie. She was not only intelligent and witty, but also brave and full of interesting stories. He discovered that she had already traveled to more than 15 countries, always seeking adventures and unique experiences. During a pause in the conversation, Jordan finally mustered the courage to ask about something that had intrigued him since the beginning of the evening. "Stephanie, I hope you don't mind me asking, but what happened to your leg? I noticed that you have some difficulty walking." Stephanie's smile faltered for a moment, but she replied with surprising calm. "When I was 10 years old, I was hit by a car while riding my bicycle on the street outside my house. My left leg was so damaged that the doctors had to amputate it below the knee." Jordan remained silent, processing the information. Stephanie continued, "It was in that same accident that I got this scar on my face. For a long time I hid behind my hair, ashamed to show the marks the accident left." "But that didn't stop you from doing all these amazing things," observed Jordan in awe. Stephanie smiled. "At first it was hard, but my parents always encouraged me not to let it define me. With time and a lot of practice, I learned to do everything anyone else my age does, even more in some cases. I've already run 5 marathons with my sports prosthetics and I'm preparing for the 6th, she added with a smile. Jordan was impressed. The woman sitting in front of him was so different from the image he had formed of Stephanie over the years. He felt ashamed for having made judgments based on appearances and office rumors. "You are amazing, Stephanie," he said sincerely. I'm sorry if I ever judged you wrongly or underestimated you." Stephanie looked at him with a mix of surprise and gratitude. "Thank you, Jordan. You know, I also had the wrong impression about you. I always thought you were one of those superficial guys who only talk about themselves. I'm sorry for the hasty judgment." The two laughed, feeling a connection growing between them. The conversation continued to flow naturally, touching on topics ranging from their work experiences to dreams for the future. They were so caught up in their conversation that they barely noticed when Paul and Michelle approached to say goodbye. "Hey everyone," said Paul, looking a bit surprised to see Jordan and Stephanie so comfortable with each other. "Michelle and I are heading out. Are you coming?" Jordan looked at Stephanie, a silent question in his eyes. She smiled and replied, "I think we'll stay a little longer if you don't mind." After Paul and Michelle left, Jordan and Stephanie continued their conversation, now in a more intimate and reflective tone. "You know, Stephanie," Jordan began, "I'm really impressed with you. At the company, you always seemed so reserved. But here, you're so confident and full of life. It's like you're two different people." Stephanie sighed, her gaze becoming distant for a moment. "Here I am in my environment, you know. Everyone knows me, they know who I am and where I come from. They don't judge me for my appearance or apparent limitation. At work, well, from the first day I noticed the looks and whispers. Day after day I ended up retreating into a cocoon." She paused, taking a sip of her drink before continuing. "The environment we're in ends up greatly influencing how we feel and see ourselves. It's sad, but it's true." Jordan felt a pang of guilt. Although he had never actively participated in the malicious comments, he also never made a real effort to get to know Stephanie. "I'm sorry you went through that," he said sincerely. "No one deserves to be judged that way." Stephanie smiled, a smile that lit up her entire face. "Thank you, Jordan. You know, tonight has been a very pleasant surprise. When Michelle told me it would be you, Paul's friend, coming, I almost decided not to come. But I'm glad I did." The night went on, and when they finally decided to leave, both felt that something special had happened. They said goodbye with a warm hug, a silent promise that this would not be their only meeting. The next day the office was bustling. People whispered and shot curious glances at Jordan when he arrived, greeting Stephanie warmly in the hallway. But instead of being bothered by the attention, Jordan saw an opportunity. Approaching a group of colleagues, he started, "Hey, did you know that Stephanie has already run 5 marathons?" The looks of surprise encouraged him to continue. To another group, he mentioned, "Stephanie has visited more than 15 countries. She has incredible stories to tell." And so, day after day, not only did Jordan and Stephanie grow closer, but other colleagues also began to see Stephanie in a new light. It was possible to notice a change in her demeanor, the growing confidence in her steps. Her voice, once almost inaudible in the office, was now frequently heard in lively conversations during coffee breaks. A few weeks later, Jordan invited Stephanie to meet his parents. They lived in a cozy house in the suburbs, with a well-kept garden in the front. As they entered, they were greeted by the delicious smell of a roast in the oven. Jordan's mother, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, welcomed them with a warm hug. "So you are the famous Stephanie. Jordan can't stop talking about you," she said with a playful smile, making Jordan blush. Jordan's father was sitting in the living room watching a soccer game. When he got up to greet them, Stephanie noticed something that surprised her. He also had a prosthetic leg. Noticing Stephanie's gaze, Jordan's father smiled. "Diabetes," he explained. "I had to amputate it 5 years ago, but that doesn't stop me from running after my grandchildren in the backyard." At that moment, Stephanie understood why Jordan was different from the others. He had learned within his own family that physical limitations were not seen as impediments, but as challenges to be overcome. The afternoon passed quickly, full of laughter, stories, and a growing sense of belonging. When Jordan took her home that night, there was a different energy between them. Standing at Stephanie's doorstep, Jordan held her hands, looking deeply into her eyes. "Stephanie, I think I'm falling in love with you," he confessed, his voice trembling slightly. Stephanie's heart raced. "Jordan, I'm falling in love with you too," she replied, a radiant smile lighting up her face. Under the soft moonlight, they shared their first kiss. A kiss full of promises and of a love that had been born from the most unlikely of situations. As he walked back to his car, Jordan couldn't help but smile. He thought about how a simple favor for a friend had changed his life in ways he could never have imagined. Thanks to Stephanie, he had learned to look beyond appearances, to value the inner strength and beauty that exists in every person. And so, with a light heart and full of hope, Jordan drove home, eager for the next chapter of this unexpected but deeply true love story. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.